So firstly, the objective that we had for this project. So just to sort of set the scene, this is a first for us, for a Sharp Beauty in an in-store environment. We have had semi-permanent solutions up until this date. This was a real first for us in the UK, but also in the global market, to have something that was permanent and experiential as well. So the objective for us was really to have that really strong premium experiential display that people can get hands-on with our product there and then. Showcase the range. As I mentioned, there's a lot of products within the families that I've talked about, so how do we really get that across and get that clarity across as to what the right product is for the consumer, and then continue to drive that awareness and that momentum that we've already created in the last 3 years, and really drive ultimately the consideration for purchase. So that's where we started. So as I approached the brief, I had 5 real considerations that we really looked into, and looked at the insight that we had on our side, and also really supported by Linney's as well on this point. So first and foremost, obviously, it's the consumer. Where are they shopping? What are their needs and expectation? I think without dwelling on the fact that the pandemic did have an effect, it did. You need to have a reason to go out and shop within the market now. So how do we wow and delight consumers? It is a highly considered purchase. You know, there are competitors out there, so it's really important that when we launch incredibly strong, and we've got the consumer in our front of our minds, basically, and when we're approaching this brief. Secondly, brand awareness and creative. So I've talked a little bit about this already, but as I mentioned, we went first to market with these displays that we're going to share with you today. So globally, we don't have anywhere that's a permanent solution such as what we're about to show you, which is super exciting. Making sure that the brand and that fall hair kind and the versatility gets across, and it's really truly what we stand for, and appealing to the UK market and consumers as well. So how do we turn all those key messages and what underpins our brand to make that appealing to our consumers? Okay, so retailers and store environments. So it's a very different landscape across all our retailers. You know, it's identifying who are our strategic partners, who we really want to win with. As I mentioned already, it's incredibly tough. It's tough for our retailers. There's a lot of work going on with some of our strategic partners in-store refits and bringing them up to the latest standard of experiential, which is what consumers are wanting. Looking at the locations that we're in as well, which is really important. We don't just want to be everywhere, we want to show up in the right place at the right time. Working really closely with our retailers on their floor plans and their departments, and how they're segregated, what their furniture, their shop fit looks like, where we're positioned, are there any opportunities to drive footfall to the particular location within the store, or any ways to amplify that in any way. And what is the space like? What's surrounding that? How can we make the best use of that space with what we need to abide by to their retailer guidelines? And power is a big one for us within this particular brief. Fourth is, obviously, we need to engage people, but it needs to be educational. You need to know what you're buying. You need to know you're buying the right product ultimately. So it's great having an attractive standout display. However, you need to clearly display your range effectively, what each product is, what it does, what the outcome is, and then have a go with it. The ideal is to have working demonstration models so you can see actually how it works on your own hair. Interactivity. So I think, again, a big point for us, especially with the spaces that you're limited by, is using interactivity to really help with the shopper journey piece. To make sure that, again, you're finding the right product for them. So it's a real aid to doing that. And with that, you can learn about the product. You can see it actually in use. So the point of this part of the brief really is to make sure that we have that supporting rich content to be able to educate the consumer on how to use different tools or how to create a different style outcome. And finally, versatility and longevity. So this is super important, especially for a business of us, because we are continuing to innovate daily. Literally everything comes to fruition quite quickly from our engineers. As soon as they've got an idea, they jump on it. So for us, the space needs to be versatile enough to incorporate that and think about MPD, how we launch limited edition ranges, how the ranging changes from retailer to retailer or store to store, whether it's flagship or just a high street store. What those environments and space looks like. So if there are power restrictions, how do we still offer that same experiential piece as well? So that leads me to yourself.
Okay. So, thank you, Laura. So I think what that really frames for us is the brand positioning and also the marketing objective. As you can see on the next slide, they're summarised in terms of brand and product awareness. Thinking about the retail store environment, we've got to think about where those shoppers are going to be and how we're going to translate to those shoppers. Thinking about engagement and education, driving that connection with the audience and the target demographic, and like Laura mentioned, keeping it flexible, adding versatility and longevity. Now, you might be wondering, and you'd be justified in thinking, what does this guy know about hair drying and hairstyling? Valid point.
This isn't an outcome, by the way.
Yeah, I don't use Shark, by the way. Luckily, we don't trust ego and opinion. We have an insight-focused design strategy. And what that really means is, clearly the brand can tell us a lot about the consumer. We need to then try and pick that apart and think about how we influence that decision-making process in store. So we have an insight team, and before we jump into any kind of creative process, we would want to do some quantitative and qualitative insight. I'll give you a very top line. When we talk about quantitative, we're measuring data that allows us to learn things about the use of colour, model shot, tone of voice, language. When we're talking about qualitative, we're thinking a bit more about observational. So this is where we're starting to think about how we might affect a shopper journey. When somebody's stood in front of a fixture, can we control the hierarchy of information that they're processing and kind of leaning towards? Only once we're at that point and we've got that good understanding from the brand and from our own research, would we then jump into the creative process. And as a designer myself, I've been a designer in this point of sale industry for the last 20 years. This is the fun bit for us. We get to put pen to paper, we get to make some mood boards, and we start to try and distill down the physical structure and the graphical communication. And what's nice about the way we work with Shark is this is very collaborative. So we'll have multiple touch points through the project. It's nice to share mood boards. Sometimes our clients give us the content for those mood boards. That's okay. Not because we're not capable. We will happily do that. And it's always better when it's collaborative. And then we can start to, if we wanted to, we can insight test at this stage as well. We can insight test at sketch stage. Once we get a little bit further into this project and we're starting to commit to some decisions and some discussion points, we're thinking about critical path, we're thinking about materials, we're thinking about budget. The rule in the Linney studio from a retail perspective is don't show a client or retailer something that isn't possible. So we do all of our homework in the very, very early stages of the project to make sure we're only designing things we can deliver. That fits within a retailer guideline that's deliverable within the time, availability of materials, working with Sustain to think about its end of life. These are all valid considerations that are built into this 3D visual. So it's a pretty picture, but it's far more than that. It's a deliverable solution. So when we start to pick apart how we're going to disrupt that shopper journey, the model we're working on is attraction, consideration, and conversion. You might have whole different analogies like stop, hold, close. It's not a new phenomenon, but it's worth us just defining that for this brand and this opportunity every single time. And so you can start to see here, obviously we're working within a retailer guideline, so there are some confinements. We have to adapt to those. The attraction then comes from, like Laura mentioned before, the competition with the e-commerce world. It's very convenient. I can get my phone out, a couple of clicks on my phone, I have a new product delivered tomorrow. So this has got to be about experience. So somebody's probably already done their homework. They might already be looking for Shark Beauty in store. They might already be familiar with some of the assets, the images, the videos. So it's important that they feature. Secondly then, and this is where we're going to try and drive a real connection between the brand, between the product and the demographic we're trying to target. The second bit is the consideration. That's the trial phase. That's picking a product up in your hand, having a go at using it. And finally, there's got to be available stock because we want that conversion. So just to think about the screen for a little bit. So Screens are a minefield. Clearly there's a part to play in the digital world. We do an awful lot of research around screens, and some stats on screen now that you can see. That first one is compelling. Within the first 5 seconds you've lost 90%. That's our research, we've seen that happen. So we've got to make the screen content compelling. If we're expecting people to click through that screen, it's got to be within 2 or 3 clicks. It can't be within 20 clicks, and it can't take 20 minutes because no one will do it. So the function of the screen is there. It's a great magpie effect. It's a great way of cutting through a noisy shopper environment, but we can't rely on that to be the sales tool then. That's the attention grabber. Importantly, on this fixture we had power, which means you can have products that you can pick up and use. That's really important. That drives that genuine connection to the brand and the product. Similarly, from Shark's own product development point of view, it only goes to market when it has full user group buy-in. So the feel of the product feels premium, the movements of the switch feels really good in your hand. It's that quality. You want people to understand that quality. You're confronted by a sea of choice. You want this one to be the one that stands out the most. And then I guess once we've gone through this process, the exciting part for us is that we get to do the installation and the manufacture. And there's a video clip playing here with no sound, and I'm just going to talk through some of those key objectives then. So this is the unit in Boots Battersea, the concept store. If you think back to our original objectives then, so this is brand and product awareness. We definitely feel like we've created that standout within the store. Thinking about that retailer landscape, how we stand out amongst the other brands that are competing for that attention. The need of the shopper, the genuine need of the shopper, understanding that brand position and delivering that content very easily to understand, putting the product in people's hands, and ultimately designing a fixture that's future-proof. So we know Sharks have got big ambitions to launch new products. You can see there are 3 product podiums. One of those is a holding place for new product, and so we can have 2 products on display, 1 product on display, 3. We can adapt the fixture to hold 6, so it's modular. And then again, thinking about its end of life and that flexibility, it can live on in store in a very premium, very tactile way. And so that is our design process, and that is obviously our conclusion of how it appeared in store. It would be easy at this point for that to be the end of the project. I guess from a Linney point of view, we've installed it, it's done right, but that's not the end of it for us. We like that full circle, that loop. We like working with the brand to really understand the efficacy, improvements we would make if we were going to roll out, how would that be? And that's very much the case with this project, and Laura's just going to talk over the final slide.
It's the start of an incredible journey. I mean, at the minute we're just in a couple of our strategic partner retailer stores, and you know, as you can see, there's some really strong metrics that we've measured with this. So we've seen a 200% sales uplift within these stores from having an in-run display to a permanent experiential display, as you've seen there. What's really exciting is that we have secured rollouts opportunities with multiple retailers in the UK market, and we're aiming to be in at least 100 doors by the end of this year, which is ambitious, but we're going to do it. It's incredibly exciting. And the other exciting point is we've actually unlocked a lot more opportunities to do some pop-up experiential. So this allows us to have or take over a space within a retailer or an event space where we can have stylists there with our product, getting hands-on, offering stylist appointments, etc. Sponsorships and other events as well, where we've become partners in with our retailers. So it's an incredible start to the journey, and this is just the start.